The gallery was suffocatingly hot, the air heavy with the scent of fresh oil paint and expensive champagne. It was the night of my first major
Double
solo
combo.
exhibition as an architect and sculptor, the culmination of years of work, and, coincidentally, the night I was heavily pregnant with my daughter. My husband, Julian, a prominent structural engineer who
Nice.
always managed to overshadow my achievements, was supposed to be by my side. Instead, he was across the room, hovering over Elena. Elena was his former business partner and ex-fiancée, a volatile woman prone to dramatic, destructive episodes, whom Julian constantly shielded under the guise
Double
of
combo.
protecting her fragile artistic temperament. I stepped away from the crowd into the dimly lit archive room to catch my breath. I didn't hear the door click shut. I only felt the sudden, violent shock
Double
of cold
combo.
steel tearing through my side. Elena stood over me, her eyes wild, holding a heavy sculpting chisel she had stolen from my display case. She didn't just strike, she pressed her weight into it, twisting the tool into my abdomen with a sickening, deliberate force. As I collapsed onto the concrete floor, clutching my torn skin while blood pooled around my velvet dress, she leaned down, her breath hot against my ear. Once you and this legacy are erased, Julian will only have me left to build with. By the time Julian arrived with the gallery security, the alarms were blaring, and I was losing consciousness, my baby kicking frantically inside me in a desperate, pleading flutter. But Julian didn't run to me. A security guard had tackled Elena to the floor, and in the scuffle, she had scraped her shoulder against a jagged display frame. "Mr. Vance, your wife is bleeding
Nice.
out. We need an ambulance immediately," the gallery director screamed. Julian looked up, his eyes sweeping over my crumpled form with a detached, analytical coldness. The chisel missed her vitals. "She can hold on," he said, his
Double
voice
combo.
flat. "Elena has a severe panic-induced heart arrhythmia. Even a minor shock can trigger a fatal stroke. Her crisis is immediate. Use the emergency medical kit and the portable oxygen tank we brought for the event on Elena." As they began to lift Elena onto a couch, I gathered every ounce of my remaining strength to grab the cuff of his tailored suit jacket. He frowned, looking down at my blood-slicked fingers. "Elena didn't do this maliciously, Clara," he muttered, pulling a pre-written liability waiver from his breast
Nice.
pocket, something he had prepared to shield her from past outbursts. He took my trembling hand, coated in my own blood, and forced my thumb against the ink pad,
Perfect.
pressing it firmly onto the signature line. "She's having a psychotic break. You're an artist.
Excellent.
You understand emotional trauma. Just hold on a little longer. The paramedics are coming." He carried Elena out into the corridor. Nobody looked back. The sirens outside were loud, but inside my mind, everything began to fade into a terrifying silence. I could feel the rapid, desperate movements inside my belly suddenly slow down, turning into a faint, erratic flutter, and then nothing. The life I had carried for 9 months simply stopped. I felt myself detached from the pain, floating near the high ceiling of the archive room, looking down at the frantic chaos below. The paramedics were finally there, their hands covered in red as they desperately tried to pack the deep wound in my side. The gallery director was shouting into his phone, his voice cracked with panic. "Where is the emergency blood transfusion unit we requested for the high-risk on-site medic team?" he screamed. A technician looked up from his tablet, his face completely pale. "Mr. Vance signed it out 10 minutes ago. He demanded the medical team divert the entire emergency kit and the private blood reserved to the VIP lounge. He told them Miss Elena had
Double
suffered
combo.
a severe arterial laceration from a shattered glass frame." The room went dead silent, save for the flatline tone of the fetal monitor the medics had brought. I watched them cover my body with a heavy white sheet, shielding my staring,
Nice.
lifeless eyes from the harsh
Perfect.
gallery lights. Just a thin wall away, in the plush safety of the VIP lounge, Julian was gently pressing a cool cloth against the tiny scratch on Elena's shoulder. "Julian, did I destroy her?" Elena whimpered, curling into his chest. Julian tossed the cloth into a bin, his voice steady and anchoring. "No, it's just a superficial graze. You were
Nice.
triggered, Elena. You weren't in control of your actions." I've already secured the waiver.
Double
Once
combo.
Clara recovers from the shock and her hormones settle, I'll make sure she drops everything. She knows how to protect herself. She's tougher than you think. He leaned down, gently blowing on her shoulder, which had already stopped oozing. But underneath his collar, the bright red print of my bloody hand stained his white shirt, the final mark I left before my heart stopped. Just then, the door swung open. The head paramedic walked in, pulling off his latex gloves, his eyes completely hollow. Mr. Vance, we need you to sign the formal pronouncement documents. Both of them are gone. Julian didn't even turn around. Leave it at the front desk. Can't you see Elena needs to be stabilized? People experience complications all the time. I'll deal with the paperwork tomorrow. The paramedic gripped his clipboard tight, his knuckles turning white, but in the end, he said nothing. He turned and walked away.
Excellent.
I drifted back to Julian. He pulled out his phone,
Excellent.
staring at our empty text thread.
Excellent.
Usually, if he was gone for an hour, I would send a message checking on him.
Double
Now,
combo.
there was only cold, gray silence.
Double
Frowning,
combo.
he typed out a message to a dead woman. If you're done throwing a tantrum in the archive room, answer me. Elena has been through enough.
Nice.
A child
Perfect.
isn't a bargaining chip for you to
Excellent.
win arguments with. Come out so we can leave. He locked the screen with a sharp snap. Elena watched him, a tiny, smug spark lighting up the depths of her eyes. Suddenly, Julian's phone rang. It was Marcus, my longtime architectural mentor. Julian answered smoothly. Marcus, if Clara ran to your studio to complain. Complain? Marcus roared through the receiver, his voice trembling with a terrifying, suppressed rage. Are you completely soulless, Julian? You put that unstable woman above your wife every single day, but tonight was her due date. Do you have any goddamn idea what you just did? Before Marcus could finish, Elena shrieked, pointing wildly at the dark gallery window. Julian.
Excellent.
She's there. She's standing in the reflection,
Excellent.
holding a baby.
Excellent.
She's looking at me. Julian spun around, staring at the dark glass window. The screen reflected only the sterile gallery track lights and his own exhausted face. There was no woman, no baby, no blood. Yet, I stood right there in the shadow of the reflection, holding my daughter tightly. She was weightless, wrapped in a blanket no nurse had ever touched, her tiny face perfectly still. Elena shrieked again, covering her ears. She knows, Julian. She knows what I did. Clara is not here, Julian said, his voice dropping into that calm, condescending tone he used to manage her crises. You've had a severe panic attack.
Perfect.
Clara is just hiding to make me feel guilty. She does this whenever she thinks I'm prioritizing your safety. The heavy oak doors of the VIP lounge slammed open. Marcus marched in, his eyes bloodshot, his coat soaked from the sudden rain outside. Without a single word, he crossed the room and struck Julian across the face. The slap cracked loudly through the room. You left your wife to bleed out for a scratch, Marcus whispered, his voice shaking with pure disgust. Clara died 20 minutes ago. The baby never drew a breath. The medics tried to save them while you sat here blowing on a scrape. Julian's expression hardened, a look of arrogant disbelief masking the sudden panic in his eyes. That's impossible. She was fine. The wound was shallow. Marcus threw a heavy manila folder onto the coffee table. Inside was the emergency medic report, the blood bank diversion log with Julian's signature, and the unused pink identification band meant for my daughter. She tried to warn the staff, Marcus said, leaning in close. Elena didn't slip. She twisted the tool on purpose. The security cameras captured everything. You traded your family's lives for a lie, Julian. Julian's hand shook as he reached into his pocket. His fingers brushed against a small velvet box, a diamond bracelet he had bought earlier that week, intended as a casual piece offering to soothe my anger after the birth. He looked at the folder, then at the bracelet, and a strange, broken sound escaped his throat. Elena scrambled backward on the couch, her facade crumbling. Julian, protect me. Tell them I'm sick. The law won't punish me if I'm sick. Marcus turned on his heel. If there is any justice, she will wake up before you get the chance to ruin her again. The gallery lights suddenly flickered violently. The walls seemed to warp, the sound of Elena's screaming stretching into a long, distorted echo. The
Excellent.
VIP lounge dissolved into blinding white heat, and the heavy silence was shattered by a massive, violent thud against my ribs. I gasped, my eyes flying open. Sunlight filled my own bedroom. My hands flew to my stomach, round, warm, and aggressively alive. Another sharp, impatient kick struck my palm. My due date. The exact same morning. Downstairs, I could hear the distant, familiar clink of Julian's coffee mug against the kitchen counter. The ordinary morning sounds of a life that had already buried me once. I pressed both hands to my belly, tears blurring my vision.
Excellent.
But my jaw set tight.
Excellent.
Not this time, my love. No one touches our blood. I grabbed my phone and dialed Marcus immediately. He answered on the second ring, his voice groggy. Clara? Everything okay? Marcus, listen to me very carefully, I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. Elena is going to attack me at the gallery showcase today.
Double combo.
She has a weapon. Julian is going to help her cover it up. I need you to hire private security, call the local precinct, and redirect my legal medical proxy to yourself. If anything happens to me today, Julian Vance is legally barred from making a single decision for my life or my child. Marcus went dead silent on the line. Clara, what are you talking about? How could you possibly know? I know the exact file name of the liability waiver Julian keeps in his breast pocket, I interrupted, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. I know the private emergency medic team he hired for the venue, and I know the exact velvet box containing a diamond bracelet sitting on the entryway console downstairs right now. Do not ask me how. Just save my daughter. A heavy breath came over the receiver. I'm calling the precinct. Security will be at the gallery before you arrive.
Double combo.
I hung up and immediately packed my bag, placing a freshly printed, notarized medical directive right on top. It explicitly stripped Julian of all medical proxy rights and locked down my emergency care under Marcus's sole authorization. When I walked downstairs, Julian was leaning against the kitchen counter, scrolling through his phone. He looked up, his brow furrowing. You're pale, Clara.
Double combo.
Is it time? Yes. The transport Marcus arranged is already outside. Julian's face darkened instantly. Transport? I'm your husband, Clara. I'm driving you to the private wing. You are my husband, I said, looking him dead in the eye as I gripped the banister. But you are not my protector today. I am done letting your twisted sense of sympathy decide whether my daughter and I survive. Is this about Elena again? He snapped, his voice tight with defensive arrogance. She is in a fragile state, Clara. I told you, I have to manage her so she doesn't disrupt the exhibition. It is about my daughter, I replied coldly, walking past him without a second glance. The gallery was heavily guarded when we arrived. Private security teams stood at every entrance, and a local police unit was already stationed near the archive room. When Julian tried to follow me into the private preparation suite, 2 guards blocked his path. What is the meaning of this? Julian demanded, looking at Marcus, who was standing inside the room. Marcus stepped forward, his face an impenetrable mask. Mr. Vance, you're officially removed from the exhibition's emergency response protocol. Your wife's directive is absolute. You have no legal say in her care or her environment today. Julian laughed, a sharp, patronizing sound. Clara, this is pathetic melodrama. You're using our child as a chess piece to punish me because I keep Elena stable. From the bed, I looked at the lead security officer. Please log that Mr. Vance is considered a hostile risk factor to the patient. Julian's jaw tightened, his face flushing with deep public humiliation. Before he could speak, his phone buzzed violently in his hand. A FaceTime call from Elena. Without a second thought, he turned on his heel and walked away to answer it, choosing the same path he always had. The crisis came at 6:41 p.m. Elena bypassed the outer perimeter by screaming that Julian had authorized her entry. She made it past the second corridor, but she didn't make it past the security detail outside the archive room. Her coat was disheveled, her right sleeve hanging heavily with the weight of the stolen metal chisel. When the guards tackled her, the blade clattered loudly against the concrete floor. She took everything. Elena shrieked, her eyes locked onto me through the open doorway as the police pinned her down. Once she and that baby are erased, Julian will only have me left to build with. Julian
Perfect.
arrived 30 seconds later. He saw Elena on the floor, her shoulder lightly grazed from the scuffle against the wall. He didn't look at the chisel on the floor. He didn't look at me, gripping the side of the bed through a violent contraction. He ran straight to Elena. "Let her go. She's injured," he yelled at the officers. "Get the medical kit. She has a heart condition." Marcus stepped directly into his path, his voice cold enough to freeze the room. "The medical kit stays exactly where it is. Her scratch is superficial. Your wife is in
Double
active labor
combo.
after a targeted attack. Choose your next step very carefully, Julian." Julian looked between Elena, who was sobbing dramatically on the floor, and the room where the monitors beeped rapidly around her.
Nice.
For a split second, the same arrogant,
Perfect.
dismissive glare from my first life crossed his face. He actually reached for Elena's arm. "She's sick, Marcus. You don't understand the pressure she's under." "Remove Mr. Vance from the premises," Marcus ordered the security team. Julian's face went entirely white as two large guards grabbed his arms, dragging him down the sterile corridor alongside the police officers who were wheeling a screaming Elena away in handcuffs. The heavy doors slammed shut on him. He was completely shut out. 10 minutes later, the delivery room became a battlefield, but this time, the resources were exactly where they belonged. The private medical team Marcus secured didn't leave my side. There was no diverted oxygen, no stolen emergency blood, and no husband trading my life for a lie. Through the intense pain and the blinding lights, I heard a sharp, furious cry split the room. "She's here, Clara," the doctor smiled, lifting a beautiful, healthy baby girl. "Mother stable, baby stable. Everything is perfectly controlled." The relief that washed over me felt like it belonged to 2 lifetimes. I held my daughter close, kissing her warm forehead. "We made it, Gracie." The aftermath was absolute. The security footage, the stolen chisel, and Elena's own recorded threats made the legal proceedings swift. She was convicted of attempted aggravated assault and ordered into a secure, long-term psychiatric facility under criminal custody. This time, no liability waiver existed to save her. Julian's fall from grace was even more devastating. Marcus brought the full security log, the altered medical directive, and Julian's behavior during the attack directly to the engineering firm's board and the licensing committee. The investigation was brutal. His suspension from the firm became public, his professional reputation completely shattered within the architectural community. He was no longer the brilliant engineer. He was the man who threatened his own family's survival for an unstable ex. 3 days later, Julian stood in the doorway of my recovery room under strict security supervision. His tailored suit was gone, his eyes hollowed out by sleeplessness and ruined pride. He looked smaller than I had ever remembered. He pulled the small velvet box from his pocket, his hands trembling as he offered the diamond bracelet. "Clara, please, let me see our daughter.
Nice.
I bought this for her. I want to fix this."
Perfect.
I looked at the bracelet, then up at his exhausted face. "You bought that jewelry in another life to quiet your own guilt. You don't get to dress my daughter in a gift you failed to earn." "I am so sorry," he choked out, a single tear escaping his eye. "I didn't know Elena would go that far." "A sincere apology cannot bring back what you were willing to let burn," I replied coldly. "You made her pain sacred and my life disposable. Now you can live with the consequences." The divorce was finalized before Gracie's first birthday. I sold our old house, stripping away every memory of a man who required a tragedy to remember I mattered. On a bright, golden afternoon, I sat in the garden of my new home, watching Gracie happily smash her first birthday cake into her cheeks. Marcus sat nearby, laughing warmly as he poured fresh tea. For a fleeting second, the shadow of that cold archive floor crept into my mind, the memory of a white sheet covering my face while Julian tended to a scratch. But as Gracie laughed, reaching her tiny, frosting-covered hands out to me, the phantom pain dissolved into the sunlight. In my first life, I died waiting for him to choose me. In this life, I chose myself first. I saved my daughter, I buried his arrogance, and
Nice.
I proved that a mother's strength is a foundation no broken man can ever tear down.